In January 2026, one of the most dangerous geopolitical flashpoints on Earth is once again at the brink. A brief but intense war last year between Israel and Iran shocked the world, and analysts now warn the spark could flare into something even bigger, dragging the United States into direct conflict. This isn't theoretical anymore. In the past week, top Arab diplomats have urgently warned Washington that American military intervention, once openly discussed by the U.S. president, could destabilize the entire region, risking attacks on U.S. bases and catastrophic economic fallout. Tensions eased briefly today, but only through intense diplomacy by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and Egypt. Even so, the United States continues to send mixed signals. Military assets remain in place, sanctions are tightening, and Israel remains on high alert. The question now isn't whether war could happen, but whether it will. And if it does, what shape will it take? In the next chapter of this crisis, one mistake, miscalculation, or missile could pull the world's most powerful military into a war with one of its oldest adversaries. Tonight, we explore how that could unfold and what it means for the United States, Israel, Iran, and you. This is the world of intrigue. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and hit the like button if you are seeking the truth. What does it look like when one of the most powerful militaries on Earth prepares for a threat that has not yet come? Not with fanfare, but with quiet urgency. In January 2026, Israeli Defense Forces raised their alert level across the country, not because war had already begun, but because the possibility of it felt much closer than at any time in years. That's the assessment from multiple U.S. and Israeli officials speaking to Reuters, who say Israel is now on high alert for the possibility of American intervention in Iran, a development that could trigger one of the most dangerous escalations in modern history. This shift didn't happen overnight. For decades, Israel and Iran have operated in a state of covert conflict and mutual suspicion. Tehran has funded proxy groups across the region, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to militias in Iraq and Yemen, designed to exert pressure on Israel without a formal declaration of war. But now, with Iran in the grip of nationwide unrest and Washington weighing options, Israeli leaders see a dramatically changed landscape. According to military sources, Israel's Air Force, intelligence units, and Northern Command have all been placed at heightened readiness. Exercises simulating emergency transitions, including rapid deployment of command aircraft, are being carried out across the country. This isn't theater, it's preparation for a worst-case scenario. At the heart of this alert is a fear of unpredictability. Iran's aerospace and missile capabilities remain significant. While Tehran has declared publicly it does not seek full-scale war, its arsenal, including ballistic missiles and drones, could reach deep inside Israeli territory if provoked, and Israel knows this. But fear isn't the only reason for vigilance. Israeli leaders are also watching Washington's signals, and they're mixed. President Trump and senior U.S. officials have publicly threatened consequences if Iranian forces escalate or if the Iranian government crushes its own protesters. Behind the scenes, however, U.S. options being discussed range from cyber operations targeting Iranian internal security to more traditional military strikes. European officials even told media that a U.S. strike could be imminent before recent diplomacy temporarily reduced tensions. This limbo, where war is possible but not yet official, is the danger zone. Israeli defense planners are acutely aware that misinterpretation is the real threat. If Tehran believes that America and Israel will strike soon, Iran could act preemptively, launching missiles or mobilizing its network of allies across the Middle East. That's why there's not just heightened readiness in air defense units, there's also caution. Israel is not saying publicly that it will strike Iran first, no official declaration of war, no countdown. Instead,
Military commanders are watching, waiting, preparing for possible action from others, especially the United States. In strategic terms, Israel is caught between two impossible choices: move too early and risk dragging the region into a broader conflict, or wait too long and risk losing the element of deterrence that has kept Iran at a distance for decades. This is the paradox of Israel's current alert status, prepared for what might come without knowing when or if it will. In a world where a single decision can light a fuse, Israeli military posture today tells us everything we need to know. Something big is on the horizon, and no one wants to be the one caught unawares.
For years, Iran's foreign policy has balanced on a razor's edge, part diplomacy, part deterrence. Its leaders know they are outmatched in conventional power compared with the US and Israel, but they also believe that the right mix of ambiguity and asymmetric capability can make any attack against Iran a very costly mistake. This is the core of Tehran's strategy: raise the stakes so high that no adversary chooses war. According to strategic analysts, after the brief war last year with Israel, Iran shifted from passive defense to calculated escalation management. Instead of seeking outright victory, Tehran is now focused on making the costs of any conflict unbearable, militarily, economically, and politically. In practical terms, that means three things. First, Iran has strengthened its network of allied forces and proxies across the region, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to armed groups in Iraq and Yemen. These forces act not only as deterrents, but as potential multipliers of conflict if escalation occurs, raising the price on any enemy who dares to strike. Second, Tehran has invested in layered air defenses and missile systems designed to blunt any initial assault. This isn't preparation for a quick victory, it's preparation to survive one. By making retaliation unpredictable and costly, Iran forces its adversaries to think twice. And yet, Tehran's strategy is not born of bravado, it's rooted in deep strategic calculation. Iranian political leaders publicly describe their state as being in a kind of comprehensive war against the United States, Israel, and even parts of Europe, framing economic pressure, sanctions, and political isolation as fronts in a broader conflict. This rhetoric isn't just propaganda, it reflects a worldview shaped by decades of sanctions, regional rivalries, and lessons from past confrontations. Tehran has also kept open strategic options that could exert maximum pressure without direct confrontation. One example analysts point to is the possibility of restricting movement through the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point through which roughly a fifth of the world's oil flows, if Iran were cornered. Closing or threatening this passage would send shockwaves through global energy markets. But here's the key. Iran does not want a full-scale conventional war, not now and arguably not ever. Its leaders understand that such a war would devastate Iran's economy, destabilize its borders, and likely fracture its own regime. Iranian strategy today isn't about aggression, it's about deterrence, survival, and calculated leverage. In geopolitics, deterrence is only as strong as the enemy's belief in it. And right now, the world is watching to see just how far Tehran believes it can go without igniting the very war it fears. Across the world's most powerful military command centers, there is no shortage of hardware, but there is a shortage of consensus. In early 2026, the United States finds itself in a strategic dilemma, more deeply entangled in Middle Eastern tensions than at almost any point in recent history. The question isn't whether the US could strike Iran, but whether it should, and more importantly, what the consequences would be if it does. In the past week, President Donald Trump publicly acknowledged that the killing of protesters inside Iran has apparently eased, a factor he cited in stepping back from imminent military action, even as all options remain on the table. Behind closed doors, U.S. commanders have already begun repositioning forces. Some personnel have been withdrawn from key bases across the Gulf as a precaution, not a retreat, but a signal that Washington is preparing for multiple scenarios. This cautious posture reveals the core of Washington's dilemma: strike Iran and risk a much larger regional war, hold fire and risk diminishing U.S. deterrence in the eyes of allies and adversaries alike. And powerful voices across the region are urging restraint. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and Egypt conducted intense diplomacy with Washington, warning that a U.S. attack on Tehran could trigger consequences well beyond Iran's borders, with ripple effects felt across the Middle East and straight through global markets. These Arab governments conveyed a stark message: any strike could lead to reprisals against U.S. bases from Qatar to Saudi Arabia and potentially hit vital economic infrastructure that the global economy depends on. That is a message that resonates in Washington's strategic calculus. At the same time, public opinion in the United States complicates the picture. Polling shows more Americans oppose than support U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, and while many back defensive action if U.S. forces are attacked, there is little appetite for deploying ground troops or pursuing regime change by force. This internal dynamic, leaders under pressure abroad, and a public hesitant about war, creates a unique strategic pause. The result? A U.S. government that is not retreating, but is also not rushing toward war. And on the ground in Washington, the debate continues. Do limited strikes provide leverage without igniting total war? Could diplomacy be revived if both sides de-escalate publicly? And if Iran retaliates against U.S. bases, what is the threshold for a broader military response? These are not theoretical questions. They are questions being wrestled with in secure briefing rooms right now. For the first time in years, the United States stands on the edge of a decision that could reshape global politics, and every second that passes without clarity only deepens the uncertainty. And uncertainty in geopolitics is often the precursor to conflict. If war hasn't started yet, it's not because the problems were solved, it's because diplomacy is barely holding them together. In recent weeks, a quiet but intense diplomatic effort has unfolded behind closed doors. According to Reuters and the Financial Times, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and Egypt have all intervened urgently, not to broker peace, but to prevent immediate collapse. These governments delivered a clear warning to Washington. A U.S. strike on Iran would not stay contained. It would likely trigger retaliation across the region, including against American bases, shipping lanes, and energy infrastructure. For now, this pressure has helped slow escalation. Tensions have eased slightly, but diplomats describe the situation as fragile and reversible at any moment. There is no ceasefire, no agreement, no new framework, just constant communication and constant fear. Financial Times reporting makes one thing clear. Every side believes it is buying time, but no one agrees on who benefits from waiting. Israel fears delay strengthens Iran. Iran fears pressure will turn into attack. The United States fears that either move, action or restraint, could backfire. Diplomacy right now is not a solution. It's a pause button, and no one knows how long it will hold. History shows us something uncomfortable about wars like this. They don't usually begin with speeches. They begin with assumptions, with leaders believing the other side will blink first. Right now, Israel is on alert. Iran is deterrent-focused but defiant, and the United States is weighing power against consequence. The next move may not be intentional, but once it happens, there may be no turning back. So here's the question.
Should Washington risk a regional war to stop Iran, or does restraint make the world safer? If Israel strikes alone, should the U.S. be drawn in automatically? And if diplomacy fails, who do you believe will be blamed for what comes next? Write your thoughts in the comments, because the decisions being debated right now in Washington, Jerusalem, and Tehran will shape the world all of us wake up to next.